Hey Coastal families, I hope you've been enjoying your summer so far, but we know that there are so many unknowns surrounding the school year coming up, and so I had the amazing opportunity of hosting a Zoom chat with some of our great volunteers who just want to have a conversation surrounding those unknown topics. And so I'll introduce them a little bit at the front end of the Zoom chat, but what I want to encourage you guys to do is comment any tips that you guys have that you've noticed have been working, share if you love it and you know somebody will be encouraged by it, and just remember that we're in this together.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Good. Thank you guys so much for coming. I am going to introduce you guys all pretty quickly so everybody knows who's talking when they're talking. And I'll start with Rebecca. She serves in our 1 to 2 year old room and our 5K room, and then she's also an elementary school teacher. Then we have Jen, who serves in our 1 to 2 and babies room. She is an elementary school teacher as well, but she's also got a son. We have Lauren. She is a mother of 5. She serves in our special needs classroom. She also has a daughter with autism, and she's got a son with ADHD. And then we have Maddie. Maddie serves in our 1 to 2 room as well, and she is an ADHD coach. So they all should bring a pretty unique perspective to us, and we'll see how this conversation goes. You guys ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
So I will direct my first question at Rebecca. So we know that environment is key to kids learning, right? And they're not going to get the environment that they have in the classroom because they have to be doing it at home. How would you recommend some parents set up workspaces in their home?
It's a really good question because I think this really sets up how they're going to learn and how successful they can be. So the first and foremost thing is to make sure you pick a space for them that has good lighting, that is quiet, that doesn't have a lot of distractions and noises. I think that's most important because the lighting for their eyes, if they're looking at the computer, it doesn't need to be dark. They need to have light to help with the eyes. And then the noisiness, it's just about not having distractions and everything. Also, you want to make sure you find like a desk or some kind of table for them to set their computer on and a good comfortable chair. That way you can put like a pillow under their bottom or something to make it more comfortable. I actually have my computer setting on a plastic container because it lifted my computer up higher. So I'm not straining my neck looking down, I'm not straining my neck looking up. I'm looking straight at my computer. And these are all just for their health reasons. It's really good for them to have that kind of environment. You also want to make sure their space is organized. Make sure you have a spot for their things for math. You want to have a spot for their things for reading. Make it really organized. One of my favorite things, another tip, is have them have some say in kind of decorating. Maybe they want to put a poster up behind on the wall. That kind of makes it their own space to where they have ownership over it. In the classroom, we have classroom jobs where they feel like they have ownership over the space, and you want to have the same kind of environment for them and at home where it's their space, so they're responsible for keeping it clean, and teach them how to organize their stuff. And the last thing is to make sure they always have water with them. They can be sitting doing class. You don't want them to have to get up if they're in the middle of a classroom meeting to go get water. Always have like a water bottle with them so they stay hydrated and can stay focused where they're at.
Yeah, that's really good. I love the part about decorating their own space and making it their own because it kind of gives them ownership. But I also noticed that you mentioned distractions, which can be huge because they're huge in the classroom, right? I can only imagine how much worse they can be at home. So Jen, I'll direct my next question at you. What are some good ways to set up boundaries in your home so that kids know it's time to play or it's time to work in school? And then how do you also set up boundaries so kids know when it's time for independent study and when they can use you as a resource to help them with their schoolwork?
That is a good question that I struggled with in the beginning. What I had to do was so his workspace is not he doesn't have toys, it's away from his play area, so that he's not distracted because he's a boy and he's young. Also, I made a schedule for both of us so that and I scheduled his independent time so he can look at it, and he has a clock on his desk or that tells what time it is so he can track the time. But also I scheduled time for the two of us for questions, and I scheduled time where we can do something like together, whether it's go for a bike ride or go for a walk outside or, go swimming for a couple of minutes at the pool. Just we have time together, and he has like a brain break, from school and stuff. And so that I can manage my time as a teacher and my time as a mom separate, because in the beginning I didn't have a schedule and I was so overwhelmed. So making that schedule, writing everything down, tracking it each day really, really helped.
Yeah, that's really good. And we know that like, even as we set up these things, we set up the schedule, we set up the workspace, we're eliminating distractions, we're giving them time to use us and use their teacher. We don't live in a perfect world, and there are going to be times where your kids feel overwhelmed and they're chock full of emotion. Maddie, I've seen on your Instagram, you've got some really cool ways of allowing your kids to use your environment to kind of express themselves, and how your attitude has shaped how they feel about school. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think one of the things that where I learned to kind of manage or help them manage their emotions was I had this narrative in my mind that I needed to fix their emotions. If they were sad, I needed to make them happy. If they were angry, I needed to soothe them. If they were sad, I needed to tell them to stop crying because that means pain. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I started to kind of tell myself that their emotions are not mine to fix, that environment at home didn't start to grow. So many times we tell kids, don't cry, don't do this, don't do that. And it's kind of like the opposite. They should cry, because when we're sad, we should cry, and feelings are okay to feel. So one of the things that I do at home is to help them create a space for emotions is I have anchor charts around the house that remind them that it's okay to take time to think and feel, that it's okay to feel emotions, that it's okay to be upset. And we really, when they're starting to feel, super upset or something, I will say, it's okay to feel upset. It's not okay to be disrespectful. So we need to find something now that's going to help us come out of or deal with these emotions. And when I give them lots of options, we take dance breaks, we go outside and play games, we write about it. We also encourage a lot of dialogue about feelings during dinner. So I'll ask them something that they loved about the day. I'll ask them something that they could change about the day. And I also ask them things like, tell me a compliment for one of your siblings. I find that this helps them open and learn how to use words that they can use to express their feelings. Yeah. And it's also super important for us as parents. I read in a book that we're kind of, when you have turbulence on a plane, you look at your flight attendant to see if this is serious, and if she's okay, we're okay. And for our kids, we're kind of like that thermometer. So they're always looking at us to see if, okay, how's she feeling? And it's super subconscious. We don't ever see it or catch it. So if we show all this displeasement about how awful this is and how horrific it is to have online learning, even though we feel it, and it's okay for us to feel that, but if we're showing this whole lack of empathy towards the situation, they're not going to empathize with it too, and it's going to be very overwhelming for them. So I find time for myself to feel. I find a friend to vent to. I'm constantly journaling about these things, and I speak to my husband about it. And being able to feel the emotions and kind of show them that everything is okay, even though everything is crazy. I feel that also creates a safe space for them to share their emotions and for us to deal with ours in a healthy way.
Yeah, I love that. I love that we're trying to keep it as positive as possible, right? Reflect our positive attitude on them, but also giving them a space where they know this is unusual, this can be frustrating, because even in school, when they go to school, it can be frustrating, and they're allowed to feel that and just help them work through it instead of, diminishing that feeling. So that's really great. Lauren, I know that outside of the school aspect, parents are kind of wondering what not being able to socialize their kids is going to look like in the future. How would you recommend parents combat that kind of fear?
Just bring them in my house. I've got so many kids, I wouldn't even notice they were there. Something actually that we have found helpful is having what we call safe families. We have a couple families that we get together with routinely and regularly, and this gives our kids a sense of normalcy, and it gives us a break to kind of visit with our friends a little bit. The other thing I love is the idea of a structured playgroup or a more structured story time situation. I think the kindergartners, especially my son Kingston being one of them, they miss out on the social skills that they learn in the classroom setting. And so if we're able to recreate that at home, even on a smaller scale, whether it's socially distanced or just a small group of kids that's the same kids every time, I think that would be great. If physically getting together is just not an option, which is totally understandable given the times, I love the idea of a themed virtual meeting of some sort. And I know Rebecca touched on giving kids ownership over their space and their ideas. So we'll let them come up with the idea for the virtual meeting. It could be something, you know, if you've got kids like mine, it'll be something like superheroes or a tea party or JoJo's Siwa. You don't have to talk about it for 45 minutes. But that's okay because it's fun for them and they get to chat with their friends about nonsense. And the only thing I would say is it can take a turn for the strange and peculiar really quick, like faster than you can quick pee, which is not a challenge. Don't try that. It's not a thing. Don't make it a thing. But that being said, you do have to kind of watch out because kids are kids, and but let them have fun with it. I mean, any way that they can.
Yeah, just like the same way you would monitor them in like the physical. Right. You still have to monitor them on the computer. Yeah, that's good. I love that themed virtual meeting. I've never heard that before. That's really cool.
Show and tell is really fun for them.
Yeah. So I am going to keep you on because this next question is going to be directed at you, Lauren, and you, Maddie. Lauren, I mentioned before when I was introducing you, you have a daughter with autism and a son with ADHD, and then Maddie, you are an ADHD coach. And I know that kids with special needs that need accommodations, this can be really tough for parents now that they're at home because they're not only having to get their kids online, set them up on the technology aspect of it and help them with their homework, but the accommodations that would be provided to them in school still need to be provided to them at home. What are some ways you guys have noticed or some things that have been helpful for you guys to, what's the word I'm looking for? Provide those services to your kids.
Okay, so my son Kingston, he's ADHD, and whenever it's time for us to sit down to read, the first thing he says to me is, "Hold on, let me get my socks so I can do my stick tricks." Okay, I didn't know that reading and breakdancing together was a thing, but it's not actually. It doesn't really work. But he breakdances every other word, and we've been working on you know, a little bit more focus and attention being paid to the reading actually. But you can imagine him sitting in front of a computer. He's 5 years old and sitting in front of a computer, listening to an instruction, or even another student sharing a story. It's about as successful as teaching an otter to tap dance, I would imagine. It's a very particular art form, and typically not very successful. So we've been navigating through those challenges with some accommodations like letting him hang upside down off the couch and read upside down, or listen upside down, or 2 forward rolls and then 3 minutes of sitting. And it's a lot of negotiations on my part on the home front. And then you have Eva, she's Eva, and you know, she struggled when we went from traditional school setting to virtual. She is very literal. And so if schoolwork was going to be done at home, then that just made no sense to her. And she was like, "This is schoolwork, I'm at home, see you later, all done." And so we had to kind of work with her. But I think what helped me the most with both situations was that I had a great relationship with their teachers. Yes. Eva's teacher last year was amazing. He had me write a letter at the beginning of the school year describing in detail all of the things that made Eva, which I thought was genius. Mm-hmm. This allowed me to pour onto paper and give to her teacher a list of all of the things that made Eva such a sweet and sparkly and delicious soul. And she was able to better help Eva in the classroom, and it kind of put us on the same page. So when we did have troubles with Eva when she first came home and transitioning to like schoolwork is actually able to be done at home, and we had to call it something different, and it was a whole thing. But her teacher and I were able to work together as a team, and that was something that I think was invaluable. And so this school year, I will be writing 5 letters, 1 for each of my kids' teachers. They're either going to laugh or cry about it, but either way, here's your student, my kid, and let's go team. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
I love that so much, Lauren, because that's one of those things that is the absolute best thing that a parent can do when they have a child with special needs. They have to see their teacher as a teammate. You guys are on an education team together. And I also, as Caitlin mentioned, I tutor children that have ADHD. I myself also was a student that grew up in the system with ADHD, and I taught for 15 years. So I have a ton of experience with like all of these types of behaviors and whatnot. And one of the things that parents expect, especially now at home, is for the child to sit in front of the computer the way we kind of are right now. But that's like impossible. Like, this is a screen full of like so much fun things. Like, this equals fun. House is home. House is not school. So no matter how they learn, if they're jumping on the couch, break dancing and spelling, hanging from the counter, I have students that I tell their parents, like, put them in their usual spot, and their usual spot is underneath the table. Whatever works, learning is learning. Yeah. And I also, like Jen said, one of the things too is that after this whole prolonged time in front of a screen, we almost feel like letting them play will release them, but it's kind of quite the opposite. So one of the things that I like to do is kind of encourage my parents to give their kids like a break from school to like screen time by giving them some sort of activity, 30 minutes of music and dancing, 30 minutes of playing outside with nothing. Just go play. They're going to be bored. They're going to complain. But then after like 5 minutes, they're going to be having the best time. Board games, whatever it is, something that will help them like kind of transition back from like the school part of school to like, okay, now we're going to come and enjoy this whole same setting as like a home setting. Yeah. So that I think that, you know, learning from home can be beneficial for children with special needs, but it's also a struggle because like parents sometimes feel that lack of, I don't know if what I'm doing is right. I don't know if this is the right thing to do for my kid. And like Lauren said, like, get together with your teacher and, you know, come up with a plan. And I have met very few teachers in my lifetime that have never wanted to really like work with a parent when a parent has genuinely come to them and been like, hey, help me help my kid. And I think that's a beautiful, like a good solution for like the next school year.
Yeah, I heard a lot about developing transitions, you know, allowing your kid to movement so that they're able to like keep their mind focused, right? But one of my favorite things that both of you mentioned is staying in constant communication with your teachers. And I think that there's this fear around that. People think that if they reach out to a teacher too often, that they're a burden of some sort, or the teacher doesn't care enough. And as a former special needs educator, and I'm sure Jen and Rebecca can speak to this as well, it helps us so much when we know what you're doing at home, what you're expecting in the classroom, how your child is reacting to different academics. And so that constant communication with a teacher, whether virtual learning or when we get back to traditional school, I think that that's so important. And so that was one of my favorite things you guys said. I will direct my last question at Jen, because you bring a unique perspective being both a parent and a teacher, right? And we know that this is so abnormal. It can be kind of overwhelming, and like we could get consumed in all of that it is, right? How do you combat some of those feelings of being overwhelmed between trying to do your job as a teacher and educating your son at home?
Definitely I've had to, I found that I had to make that schedule and follow it. And, you know, once whatever that I put for my end of day for that day, like school was off. I shut my computer off. I stepped away from my school school area. And then I focused on, you know, being the mom and doing, you know, things as the mom. I also found, like, as a single mom with this quarantine, is hard, you know, like not having an extra set of hands to kind of like step in for a minute so I could go out, you know, just to take a breath of air. And so I, like Lauren said, have like safe families or safe friends that I trust, that I know are safe, that, you know, I will reach out to them, and sometimes we'll vent to each other, and sometimes I'll be like, okay, let me come and get Luke. Let us take him to the park, or, you know, take him, you know, to ride for a bike ride or something like that. And that allows me to kind of regather and like, and, you know, get my patience back and stuff, so that I can feel refreshed. And, you know, my son's not scared of me and not afraid to come to me, you know, asking for help, because I'm, you know, kind of feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's really good. I think in any aspect of life, creating those accountability partners and that support system is key, right? In any situation you think about in life, if you have those two things, you can probably make it through. And so I think when we're addressing these overwhelming feelings of school, those are key, no matter who you are, whether you're a child wanting to get on Zoom, a themed Zoom party, you're a teacher meeting a teacher friend who's going through the same thing, or you're a parent who's just not knowing what to do. Even these conversations in itself, we're just creating a space where we're saying it's normal that this is abnormal. I think that's really, really good. And that was my last question. Do any of you have anything you would like to add?
I would like to add in that there's times when you might feel it's difficult getting your child to focus, getting them to sit, to do their work. You're constantly telling them, sit down, do your work. I teach kindergarten, so I get it. They're 5-year-olds that go a million miles a minute. I think it's really important if, just like we do at school, we have positive reinforcement, we have our classroom management. We give positive rewards, or we give praises to the kids that are doing the right thing, you know? So I think at home, if you find yourself struggling with getting your child to sit and do their work, and you're constantly fighting them to do what they're supposed to do, I think giving them a reward system, a positive reinforcement system, is really important. And it can encompass so many things. You can go online and you can find tons and tons of ideas of what to do. Some of them could be little punch cards. They get a card, and after 10 punches, they get a reward. It could be a sticker chart. Every time they sit down and do their work and they're focused, give them a sticker, or they completed their assignment in a good amount of time, give them a sticker. It could be a jar and you have pebbles or those stones, and you put a stone in the jar, and when it's full, they get a reward. And really have them take ownership over it. Have them come up with kind of rewards that they would want realistically. In my classroom, I always had my students come up with the rules and expectations in our classrooms, and they always came up with the rewards for meeting those expectations. Now, obviously, I'm the teacher, I get the final say, so something like, I'm like, that's ridiculous, that I'm like, do I look like I'm made out of $1 million? You know, that's not gonna work. You know, we keep it, you know, realistic, and that way they feel ownership over it. So I suggest doing that at home too. Have them come up, okay, what should school at home look like? What are some expectations that you should have, or some rules at home for doing your work? So when they come up with it, they're owning it. So if they break one of those rules or don't meet that expectation, you can say, listen, you came up with it. This is something that is an expectation that you feel like you need to be successful learning at home. And then the same with the rewards. Have them think of some things that would be fun. Maybe it's going to the park. Maybe it's going to get ice cream, whatever it is that they like to do. Have that be the rewards, and write it down so that they can see it. Write down, here are the expectations, here are the rewards. And last thing I want to say is that when we do rewards, and we always want, the end goal is for them not to need a reward to do what they're supposed to do. So it's really important that you start out, maybe it would be a daily thing. I'm thinking of kindergartners. It would probably need to be a daily thing for the younger that they are. But don't always keep it a daily thing. Start every other day, every 3 days, once a week, you know, slowly back up. When you see that they're doing what they're supposed to do, they kind of get it. You need to slowly back up so that they know, now that we know this is what is expected of you, this is what we want to see, so then it becomes an intrinsic award instead of an extrinsic award.
Yeah, Rebecca, thanks so much for adding that in there. I know that reward systems are great for everybody, right? Who doesn't love rewards? But also that creating that reward system externally and then moving it internally is really good as well. But that is all the time we have left for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Man, wasn't that a great conversation? I hope that you guys were able to get so much from that. I know I was. But what I really hope is that you were encouraged knowing that you're not alone in this. Kids ministry isn't just something that you walk down a hallway every weekend for. It is a family ministry. We are doing this life together. So just remember that we love you, we're praying for you, and we are here if you need anything. Have a great school year.